Okay, so today we're talking about sequential art. So, as a more formal definition, in comic studies, sequential art is a term proposed by Will Eisner to describe art forms that use images in a specific order for the purpose of graphic storytelling. So, this is a term that was specifically created in regards to making comics. And you can see here that it's been a discussion in the comics world by a few different comics artists. But for our assignment, the definition is a little bit more simple. Sequential art is a series of two or more images that fit together. They can tell a story or show multiple perspectives of a moment or a situation. Sequential art can be in the form of a comic, but it doesn't have to be. It could simply be a series of corresponding illustrations. So we're going to look at some examples, but first, this was actually just on the Wikipedia page. Edward Muybridge. He was a photographer, and he was interested in showing how multiple photos together could create a sequence and show either movement or a short story. And then Winsor McCay is well known for his comic strip Little Nemo. And I believe that there were several other comics. We've seen comics in newspapers for many, many years. But Winsor McCay was known for kind of pushing the boundaries of what a comic could be. And he distorted length, and he was just known for being very experimental. And that really lended to storytelling and the type of story he was showing in his work, which was a little boy who would wake up and have these either vibrant adventures or dream-like situations happen. So expanding the comic and the layout also really lended itself to the experimental imagery that he was trying to make. So these are just some examples. Minju is an artist, and she makes a lot of commercial products, but she also has made some short and sweet little comics. They're not necessarily in a formal comic style with traditional panels. They're just a series of images, and they don't have any words. So I think this is interesting, but you can see this one is called Flowering. So the character brings a pot and lifts their hat to reveal a flower. They then take the flower off of their head and put it in the pot. So it's a simple story told with about 5 panels, or just 5 sequential images. This is Zhao Zhu, otherwise known as Peko. This is another example of a kind of more abstract and experimental comic. This one's a little bit more formal with the distinguished panels and organization, but the story is very creative. And it doesn't, comics can be a very self-expressive medium. So don't feel like you have to create something that's so defined and commercial. It really can be anything that you want. This one is Logan Wheeler. Again, it doesn't have any words except for the title of this album. Again, you can see that in just a couple of images, you're able to get a short story from it. Allison Zai is so funny and has a little bit of a dark humor, but you can see that you can convey a lot in just 2 images. So being simple can still be very effective. So you see the text, "You want to come over later?" And then you swipe, and the response is, "I actually decided I never want to see you again." This is a collaboration between Jillian Tamaki and Michael DeForge. Again, it's fairly loose and a little abstract. It has a small story to it, but there's a lot of room, I think, for imagination. This is Jacob Hopt, who is kind of similar to Allison. His work can also be very reflective and introspective and a little dark and satirical, but so funny. So this one says, "I always hoped when I died I would meet a creator. Why? I don't know, I guess I wanted to offer some feedback. You are such a whiner." So you can see it's just really simple. Jacob often uses these characters, the skeleton and the ghost, just having these really short conversations that are funny, insightful. It gets straight to the point of what he's trying to say. But it can also be a little vague and up to interpretation. So it's up to you whether you want to explain yourself so much or if it is maybe a little bit more open. This is a piece by Lila Milewski, who is another teacher here at Micah. She created this comic during the pandemic quarantine and was just kind of reflecting on that conversation that experience and conversations that she had with her neighbors. So last week I asked P how she was. "I'm lonely. I gave myself one day to be depressed." That weekend the weather was warm. I heard P talking to her neighbor on the left. They were sharing tools. We were all out at once, separate in each yard, but together in gardening. P dropped a yucca plant over her fence. I filled her a bucket of peat moss. Yesterday she invited me inside her gate. "Lila, I want to show you something." Her tree peony had bloomed. I had never seen such large flowers. So this comic is, again, just kind of showing these quiet moments in her personal experience. And even though this may seem like an insignificant story, it was significant to her. And she showed these kind of quiet moments and gives them more significance. Emily Carroll, she creates these really beautiful comics. And I want to show this work because she does such a great job of being experimental, and she breaks the panel in a lot of interesting ways and shows these sequences kind of unexpectedly. So she tilts the horizon line. She has these kind of many layered things that are happening in her comics. So it's very visually interesting and beautiful, and it really corresponds with the story that she's telling, because often her stories have a horror theme. So her compositions add to the uneasiness of the story that she tells. She does an interesting mix of beautiful and terrifying, which I think is really fun and can be difficult to do. I also love the way that she intertwines the words into the image in such interesting ways. It's not just an image and a bubble in a square. Everything's kind of flowing together. So if you haven't read this book, I recommend it. It's so good. It's scary, but it's not too scary. So for the assignment, I want you to create a series of 2 to 4 corresponding images. The image can contain formal panels and words, or not. But whatever you choose, keep it simple. The piece should be no smaller than 5 inches. I'm not going to give you an exact dimension because I want you to do what feels right for your sequential series. The medium can be traditional or digital, or you can use mixed media. I'm fine with you being experimental, but it should be cohesive, have good craftsmanship, and give us something interesting to contemplate. So I hope that you have fun with this project and be thoughtful with it. You'll also have a little bit longer to work on it. So go into the details in Canvas. Please note the deadlines and have fun getting started.